Good Shabbos, everybody. Mazel tov to Annie, to the whole family. I'm going to speak about our Parshat Shoftim this morning. I want to start with a brief apology. If you watched my Friday message, I promised I would talk about this book, which is King Artus, a Hebrew Arthurian romance from 1279. But then I looked at my watch. And so if you are interested in this, I promise another King Arthur is coming. Because this week's parasha, in chapter 17, we are talking about kings and the biblical laws for kings. And so as I hope to argue to you, these are not just laws about kings, but laws that relate to each and every one of us. We are approaching Rosh Hashanah, our communal coronation ceremony for our God, our once future and in fact only king. Now, one of the new melodies that I'm introducing this high holidays is a prayer that the rabbis in me are adding. It's called V'ye'etayu, and it includes a new phrase. I'm going to teach it to you now. V'yitnu lecha, v'yitnu lecha, keter melucha, keter melucha, v'yitnu lecha, v'yitnu, keter melucha. It's very easy. V'yitnu lecha, keter melucha, v'yitnu lecha, keter melucha. Very good. That's going to come in handy a lot, starting on Rosh Hashanah. It means they shall give unto you, God, the crown of kingship. Now, that sounds pretty formal, right? But I can guarantee you that the melody we're doing is not formal, because here's the chorus, and I have my Korina guys. I have a few of us around. If you can help me out. What happens after some of the Hebrew is this. It's nice, right? It's a Vishnitz melody. It's a Hasidic melody. If you're curious, by the way, to learn more of these, you can come this Wednesday night, September 3rd. I'm having a class here in the evening to learn the new melodies for the High Holy Days. But this tune, along with our other High Holiday melodies, exalts God as King of the universe, Ha-Melech. And we are even in the season of kings. We say, Ha-Melech Basadeh, the king is in the field, and God is more accessible for repentance and prayer and service. But I'll take a hand poll. Who here sometimes has a problem with the idea of kings? Okay, I'll take hands. There's a few of you out there. This is, after all, America, right? The land where we threw off the political madness of King George III in order to ultimately form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. At least that's what we ultimately wrote in the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. Thank you for those who are paying attention in class. Our skepticism of kings is because we believe that governance is rooted in the consent of the governed. That's what democracy means, that people rule. And this is perfectly stated in that most famous of political tracts, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, in which one finds a comic exchange between Arthur, King of the Britons, the other King Arthur starring today, and a politically savvy peasant. Asked how he became king, Arthur tells the magical story of his election, saying, "The Lady of the Lake, her arm clad in the purest shimmering samite, held aloft Excalibur from the bosom of the water, signifying by divine providence that I, Arthur, was to carry Excalibur. That is why I'm your king." Now, for the few of you who know, what is the peasant's response to this? Anybody know? Raise your hand if you might. For the few people who, if you haven't watched Monty Python, listen, he says, "Strange women lying in ponds, distributing swords is no basis for a system of government. Supreme executive power derives from a mandate from the masses, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony." And so forth. And by the way, I totally have not been waiting 20 years to use that in the sermon. Now, in the Python's medieval farce, we see that the figure of Hamelech, the king, is both magical and powerful, yet deeply flawed and almost absurd. And if we feel that way, especially after watching that movie, we are exactly mirroring the feelings of our biblical ancestors. In this week's parasha, you can look in chapter 17 of Deuteronomy. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, provides the people with God's laws concerning the appointment of the king. To save time, I'm not going to read all of them to you. I'll summarize them for you. Our ancestors originally were kingless, like us. They dwelled as a confederation of shepherding tribes with decentralized rule, with judges, and equality under God's laws. But somehow the Torah, in today's Parsha, expects the Israelites might like to, as their society grew, become like other nations and get a king, right? It's the thing to do. It's trending. So what does God say in this week's parsha? He says, you want a king? Fine, but it's got to be a local guy, cannot be dependent on foreign sources of tech or power, can't be distracted by affairs, not too rich, and most importantly, he needs his own copy of that red book we're about to pick up, the Eitz Chaim that's in the pews. He needs his own copy of the Torah to keep him focused on God's laws, which he should, like all the rest of us, observe. In a word, a moral and limited monarchy. Now, this idea also not just shows up in the Torah, but in our prophets, where the Israelites do exactly what the Torah predicts. They ask for a king. And remember, we know we have kings. We have the famous King David, right? We have an Israelite monarchy in the Bible. In the first book of Samuel, chapter 8, they come to the prophet and tell them, hey, we want a king. Now, how do you think Samuel, the prophet, feels when they ask for a king? Yeah, thumbs down, up. He's pretty miffed, because it's basically his people coming and saying, we are voting you out of office, we want something else. So here's what the Bible says. Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord replied to Samuel. And he said, heed the demand of the people in everything they say to you, for it is not you that they have rejected. It is me they have rejected to rule over them. So Samuel takes this message to the people. He warns the people about all the bad things that we read in Deuteronomy that are going to happen with the king. And yet the story continues. The people would not listen to Samuel's warning. No, they said, we must have a king over us, that we may be like all the other nations. It's trending, right? Let our king rule over us and go out at our head and fight our battles. So I want you to note, the story of the election of Israel's first king, unlike King Arthur, is totally non-magical. No lake ladies, no sword distribution, no quivering Semite. And ironically, it's actually the inverse of Arthur. Israel's kingship actually derives from popular mandate, not from some farcical aquatic ceremony. The people ask for it. And for those of you who like Hebrew, ironically, the name of the first king of Israel is Saul, in Hebrew, Shaul, which means you asked for it. But we should note that God doesn't get angry at Samuel and his sons, although they've clearly lost the people's trust. He says, they're not rejecting you, Sammy boy. They are rejecting me. They want a melech basar v'dam. They want a king of flesh and blood, because they have rejected being ruled by a heavenly king, me, God. And this is the essential take-home, the essential Torah lesson, I think, from this part of the parasha, that searching for human kingship and that kind of leadership comes from a desire to take away some of one's own responsibility. The tribes couldn't hold it together with local governance. They wanted centralized authority, even though they already had one in the law itself. Now, this choice is not forbidden in the Torah. It just requires thoughtfulness of mind and heart. Any helpful centralization of work or power must simultaneously remind people that God is their king, and the king is just a specialist. He's not a substitute for God. And in this regard, at a great personal risk, let me perhaps make a shocking statement, as I want to do, making a parallel between kings and cantors. Now, I promise, I've talked about cantors a lot in the last couple of weeks. This is my last time for a while. I'm in bli neder, as we say. How many synagogues might come to their board and say, just like the biblical Israelites, we must have a cantor over us, that we may be like all the other synagogues. Let the cantor sing over us and go out at our head and lead our prayers. In the early 20th century, the golden age of Chazanis, when cantors ruled the world, there was majesty, there was grandeur, right? There was centralized musical authority. The Chazanim in popular culture, we became like local Jewish identity kings, like the way that columnist Melanie Phillips writes describing the British monarchy, a focus for unity, enshrining the identity of the nation. And I will admit, we cantors proudly do that. That is our job. We enshrine identity and unite people through music. That's great. It's our advantage. It's our privilege. It is something I am hoping to do here. But there is a watchful side to such things. And that is, without piety and attention, like the laws of Deuteronomy regarding the king, you get issues with any type of royalty, including musical royalty. It began to appear, consciously or unconsciously in some places, that the cantor, instead of praying for or on behalf of everyone else, was praying instead of them. His or her specialization led to the assumption, or perhaps had the subconscious goal, that no one else needed to pray. I'll admit it was a fear here. When I auditioned for this synagogue, many of the folks on the committee had the question, will the Chazan come and feel like he is the king, the absolute monarch of this lectern, which is really yours. The father of Jewish musicology, Abraham Tzvi Edelson, also had a major reckoning with this issue a century ago, Born in Europe, Edelson traveled to British Mandate Palestine, to Israel, and met Jews from all over the world, and he realized there was something bizarre about European Jews. Writing in an American Zionist magazine, Hatoren, in Hebrew, he noticed, man, all these Yemenite and Moroccan and Iraqi and Eastern European Jews kept this tradition of lay prayer leaders, like we have here too, right? And at the same time, Edelson notes, in Germany and Spain and Italy, they make the cantor the only prayer leader, and without him, one would find neither hand nor foot in the synagogue. Now, coming to my conclusion here, as someone who cares a lot about cantors and who just started this job, I will tell you I'm very pro-music and think that specialized music, such as that cantors are deeply invested in, is a significant good, right? Music, thumbs up. But I also affirm what Edelson discovered a century ago, which is that any time you specialize something, there is a danger of losing that skill in the general population if you do not strongly work towards that goal. By the way, this is the same theme if you want to have a sermon about AI for another time. One of the happiest moments in my first month here was when Rabbi Kushnick recently confided in me. People came to me and said, when we hired a chazan, I thought there would be less congregational singing. But instead, the opposite has happened. There is more congregational singing. And I was very happy to hear that because, I'll tell you there's a reason. It is because I am not your king. I do not wish to rule over you. I wish you to be ruled by God. And I can, over the high holidays, it's my privilege to lead some very highly specialized and beautiful moments of the liturgy, aided by our wonderful Korina and our amazing kids. But it is up to you, the Yitnu Lecha Keter Melucha, to give God the crown in our lives. It's why we have kids like Annie and all of our kids who lead Shacharit. We have another one next week, with the Rosen family. And it's so important that we keep that tradition because we know that God is calling all of us to enthrone him, not just people we see all the time at the front. Because the king is in the field, and like Graham Chapman's own King Arthur, there is no magic ceremony with ponds and swords. There is only your popular mandate to enthrone God. God is vulnerable, but because when we take him as our king, democratically and freely, as our ancestors did, we elevate our entire lives. Shabbat Shalom Umvorach.